Are you in the States now, actually, or?
No, right now I'm in Guatemala, and cross your fingers that the internet works.
We'll see.
It
So
was
far, it holds
glitching as
up.
soon as you said that.
No, it's showing. Yeah, it's showing uploading. Speeds work.
Yeah, my
So
end as well.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, that's good. Cool. Yeah, 99%. You're golden. Perfect. Just trying to come up with a good intro, but obviously, as always, I'm
Hello.
lacking. Yes, I'm trying to get a good pun out, but they have been lacking quite a lot. Fuck! I had now one with Guatemala. Now I forgot it again. Oh,
They got exotic birds in Guatemala, haven't they? Just like your hairstyle, Joe.
yeah, and
Is
shitty
that
passports,
a
right,
cockatoo
Jose?
in it?
Oh, horrible. Tell me about it. I'm right now applying for visas for extended stays in Europe. It's you have no idea this situation.
For any one of the listeners, Jose is, if you've ever spoken to a person from Guatemala, it is quite a challenge traveling with that passport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something else. Uh, you're,
There's a
you're,
story there.
yeah, you're well. When I go to customs, they actually ask me, why do I look like I
Oh,
look?
Jose's glitching.
They they don't trust it.
Got it, got it.
Yeah, it's like uh, I've been to multiple rooms. I actually went into a room while I was starting the Ibex project, or yeah, like a year ago. They flagged me, and it was two or three times that I had gone into the US and they flagged me. So first time I flagged me, put me in the room, then came out, just gave me the passport, went out. Then the second time I actually had interviewed. And so you sit for like, I don't know, 50 minutes, whatever, till they get to you. And then you sit down in a little like cubicle and stuff, and you get asked like, what are you doing here? And, whole life story. I'm going back to who my parents were, all kinds of stuff. Uh,
Did you get a
and
special search?
No, thankfully not. But then I come up
No.
to like, but why are you coming into the US and everything? And I'm like, well, listen, we're setting up an office here in the US. We have this company. It's a startup. We just got backed by VCs, and how much did you raise? 4 million. Here's the article. Can I read about it? Yeah, here's the article. Here's this. Here, you know.
Shit.
And he's like, but why don't you have an investor visa? And I'm like, exactly. Like, you tell me. I'm, you tell me, man. I mean, but yeah, it's a trip.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
For any one of the listeners, we've started a bit of a new format where we try to be chill in the beginning and not go into the main question right away. We have Jose here on today. He's the CEO of Ibex. And I guess, Jose, if someone in the States has used one of the bigger, like Bitcoin magazine sites or paid for a ticket, they've used your
Mhm.
services, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we not only Bitcoin Magazine, but we have a couple of interesting partnerships in the US. Most of the conferences like to use our service, Ibex Pay, to run their payments. We get some really good traction just organically. So even in Europe,
Nice.
we sometimes get people using it. We like to think it's the easiest way for merchants to get paid when it's not just a sole proprietorship, but let's say you have
Mhm.
employees, you have, you know, other people using the service, and you want to have an easy way to do it. And we're just improving it every day. And pretty soon we'll have a really cool functionality where if you're getting paid in Bitcoin, you can link directly a Lightning account and just get your Bitcoin streamed through to you without having to do anything.
Oh, you're on mute, Joe. That sounds awesome. I mean, I was using Ibex Lightning at Bitcoin Amsterdam, and it's
Yeah.
brilliant. It was, it was everywhere, and I've still got it on my phone and use it often. But mate, it's a fantastic service. And what sort of developments are Ibex working on at the moment to better improve your service, which was already a brilliant service as it was?
Well, that part that I said of the streaming payments is one of it. But we're always looking for liquidity partners in different jurisdictions so that we can actually convert to fiat instantly, because that's the other service we do. But moving away from Ibex Pay, which is kind of our more retail facing product, our core product really is Ibex Hub, and that's where most of the magic happens. So imagine this. To build out Ibex Pay, first we have to build out Ibex Hub, which is the core group of services that, this is an enterprise grade set of tools, API tools for developers to build their own Ibex Pays and their own, solutions into their apps and services and products. So anybody that thinks they can leverage Lightning to deliver a better customer experience, to facilitate payments, to just make everything more agile, instead of going through the whole development and all the problems that are associated with running your own Lightning infrastructure, you can contract our services. And much in the same way you do cloud service, you don't set up your own server infrastructure. The you can just plug into our APIs and start delivering Lightning into to your customers, and that is really our core product. Someday I'll like to do a demo for you guys so you can see, because it's really cool.
Yeah, go on. That'd be great. Going back to your, well, I'm not going back to it, but I'm just curious as to how you even ended up in Ibex, and what was your journey through the Bitcoin rabbit hole that brought you to doing what you do now?
Well, I think my Bitcoin rabbit hole story starts before even Bitcoin existed. For me, it actually starts, I believe, way back in the 80s when I was just a little kid, because I was a little kid, but I still remember stuff, right? And during the 80s, we went through a period of very high inflation in Guatemala, and we went from parity with the dollar to 1 to 7 in the space of like 5 years, which is ridiculous. And friends of the family and stuff, I saw people lose the down payment on a house. They had the money saved in the bank to do the down payment. They ended up buying a TV. That's
insane.
That is ridiculous. So that's the first event in my life that prepped me for Bitcoin. Second
Yeah.
event in my life that prepped me for Bitcoin was in 2003. I was in the first, I would say, entrepreneurial project. It was a bicycle assembly company with a friend of mine, and we were on the wrong end of a bankruptcy. So this is a wild story. There was this bank in Guatemala that liked to play fast and loose with their investments, and they were offering like really high returns on offshore savings products. Now we had to use those offshore accounts to pay our suppliers in China, because it was a bicycle assembly company, and because of Swift and stuff, you can't, at that point in time at least, you couldn't wire directly from Guatemala to China because correspondent banks and stuff. So we had to go to this offshore bank account, which was in Caymans, to wire the money outside, right? Anyway, these guys were playing fast and loose, and they had invested a bunch of money, pretty much all the money, with Bernie Madoff, which was offering
Oh,
like
fuck.
20% returns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they lost everything.
Shit.
When
Wow.
Bernie Madoff went down, like a couple weeks later, I get a call. I was on vacation at a friend's farm, just hanging out, and I get a call from my what we call VP of sales, and he says, "Hey, the bank is going bankrupt." And I'm like, "No way, Bancafe is está quebrando." I'm like, "No way, this cannot be happening." This is Friday evening, like at
It
night.
just goes to show you how quick these things happen.
And yeah, and the thing is, for the offshore where our money was, because I had gotten notified by the supplier that I had to prep the payment because the shipment was coming in the following 2 weeks. So I had to be ready. We lost all of the profit for the year, all of it.
Shit.
So yeah, when 2012 rolls around, I bump into the Bitcoin white paper randomly down you know, a Google search whatever rabbit hole. I bump into the white paper. I didn't even need to get convinced. I'm like, I don't care about the price. If they can't inflate it and they can't take it away, it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. But, I was dumb enough to not mine, even though I downloaded the client, and you could actually mine back then with a regular computer, and I didn't do that because I'm lazy and didn't understand the technology or didn't go deep enough into it. I even visited a couple of faucets sometime, but I was like, no, this is so dumb. I just want to buy this. And I went to empty Gox. I tried to send them money. My wires got blocked. And then I'm
Oh
like,
my
okay,
goodness.
it's not my time, but I'll keep tabs on it. And that's how I got into it. And then the second rabbit hole where I went in really deep was in 2017, because I was living in Rotterdam at that time and I could actually buy Bitcoin. And it was a little bit of a wilder time than it is today because there were websites that you could just swipe your card and get Bitcoin at a ridiculous 30% markup or something like that, right? Um, but anyway, I um, I bought Bitcoin, and the next day, I'm not kidding, the next day, it lost 50% from where I had bought it. And I'm like, okay, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? It wasn't a lot of money, but I gotta read about this and I just gotta go into it very, very deep. And so with my brother, because we were doing this together with him, we went in deep into this. We listened to everybody. We even listened to crazy guys like Brock Pierce and Richard Hart and what was this guy Trace Mayer, which wasn't crazy, but then he ended up being, you know, who he ended up being, um, and it was just before the block size wars, and so we went super deep. We read the Lightning White Paper, which at that point wasn't even feasible, right? But the paper came out in something like 2016, I believe, and so we were on the SegWit forums, battling there. It was a trip. So like those times were so interesting. Like I'm very helpful that I got in when I got in, and there's a lot of stories here.
It's, I think everyone has that kind of moment in Bitcoin. It's like, oh, what if, if only I got into Bitcoin sooner, or if only I mined it at the time. We all have those sort of moments of like regret, and we always make those mistakes early on in the Bitcoin journey. We might have, put our faith in various people and things like that turned out to be pretty much of a scam. So people go down this rabbit hole and they don't come out, or they don't sort of stay down there unscathed.
Yeah.
We've all got our bruises in the Bitcoin ecosystem
Hey,
in some way, haven't we?
I like to say everybody does their shitcoin tour of duty.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
I don't begrudge anybody that says, "Oh, I'm in Solana or I'm in whatever." I'm like, yeah, I was there at one point.
yeah. You'll
Let
figure
me
it
know
out.
when you get out.
Yeah.
Well, but wouldn't that be the perfect thing to post the meme "Lightning will kill your shitcoin"? Like, haven't you started doing this with Ibex? That would be
Uh,
quite a funny marketing thing.
I I would love to do that, but right
But
now,
legal says no.
yeah, legal marketing, our client base. So
Yeah,
yeah,
obviously. But
Mate, you go on.
go on, Ian. No worries.
Now, you mentioned Mount Gox. Did you get burnt by that?
no, because I couldn't. They wouldn't receive my wire. I sent it to Japan, but they wanted to see like where is this money coming from? What are you gonna use it? You have to have an invoice. Da, da, da. And I thought this is too much hassle. So I just saw the implosion, explosion from afar, and like, oh my lord,
Sounds
this
like you
is
dodged a
wild.
bullet.
But to be fair, because of everything that had happened to me, I I didn't understand how people bought Bitcoin and didn't know that the first thing you do is you take it off an exchange and take custody yourself. That's the whole value prop. Like to this day, I don't, outside of traders who are day trading and stuff, why would you have any Bitcoin, significant amount of Bitcoin in an exchange? It makes no sense to me. It's like, get it out.
Yeah, as if trading isn't risky enough. Leaving your Bitcoin on there at the same time, you're playing with fire.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you see this with Lightning specifically, Jose? Because I know a lot of, like we have the crazy OG Bitcoiners who go like, yeah, if you have in Lightning, it's an IOU and whatever
Hmm.
the hell. I'm not allowed to say the F word, otherwise I have to pay.
Hmm.
How do you go about this? Because I imagine as a business offering these services to regular mom and pop shops or even
Hmm.
bigger groups in Latin America, there's always a bit of a trade-off. How do you guys go about this with Ibex? Because we've heard you can literally stream it to your own wallet if you want to, or you
Hmm.
can use it different ways if you want to convert to fiat and stuff.
Yeah, well, what we want to do is we want to get the money into our clients' accounts or hands as fast as possible. Uh, it's a little bit tricky, and to be fair, you can't do it 100% with everything. And we are operating in a custodial world, I like to believe. Even if you do sophisticated stuff like, okay, you have your own node, but it communicates with my node, and then we establish a channel, and it's still, to me at least, at best, a joint custody situation, because I've heard all of these solutions and they're being, marketed as non-custodial and stuff. And yeah, and I just got, right before we got on this call, I just got off a call with my team where we were just discussing this. And my point of view is, let's say, if we take it back to brick and mortar world, non-custodial means I have my warehouse, only I have the key. And if the gold that I have in that warehouse somehow gets stolen, is because somebody violated the warehouse, which I'm under complete control over, or they stole the key from me and gained access to the warehouse at the gold. And it was only on me, right? And I'm in a no custodial world. But the problem with all of these sophisticated setups, and they're very sophisticated, and to be fair, they're pretty safe, but they're not 100% non-custodial. It's not that warehouse type deal. It's a situation where if your warehouse acts on my instructions, I can defraud your warehouse, right? If I somehow get exploited and I send wrong instructions, if I send the wrong payment information, whatever, if I can actually block off access to those funds, because that's the other thing. Things in Bitcoin can get lost without anybody actually benefiting, right? So we can see the funds, but you can't access them. And that is as good as somebody stealing them, at least in my opinion. Because what you want to do is preserve the integrity of the value you are. And Lightning to me in that sense means use it as a wallet. This is what I recommend to everybody. This is a wallet in the truest sense of the word. Uh, a cold storage, that's your savings, that's your bank account, whatever. Lightning, if you're not comfortable right now walking around with, let's say, 10,000 quid in your pocket, don't do it in Lightning. Just don't. And but the technology will get better. There's a bunch of stuff that's coming online right now, functionality that we're going to be adding. I do think in 12 months maybe we're in a world where we can offer either true non-custodial. It's still dicey on definition there for me at least, but it's going to be a different world because this technology is moving fast and there are solutions coming online that will address a lot of these weaknesses so we can make the offering as safe as possible and definitely a lot safer than bank accounts.
Yes, and I guess if Lightning really is the scaling tool for Bitcoin in everyday sense, if they accept I can pay my coffee with it, is a shop interested in, going full custodial to use this thing? No, they're interested to save costs and potentially get that money instantly into their bank account. Or who knows, maybe they need to pay their coffee roasters in Guatemala and send an invoice directly, right? I think that's at least how I understand the market position Lightning has, and it shouldn't be a replacement for on-chain, because if you want store of value custody, just have your multi-sig wallet in cold storage, whatever. Boom, there you go, right? Problem solved.
Absolutely.
But we often have this in-fight mode.
Oh, and there's some really cool solutions coming up in for the on-chain self-custody stuff, cold storage.
Oh, nice.
Some really cool solutions. So, okay, for Bitcoiners out there, most Bitcoiners don't know this. Even if, let's say, investment people want to buy Bitcoin because they believe in it, and maybe they hold it personally, the problem with Bitcoin right now, and everybody's saying like, why doesn't X buy Bitcoin? Well, the problem is it's not investment grade. It's not an investment grade asset. What does investment grade mean? Basically, it means you're insured with A-rated paper. A-rated paper has to be issued by some reinsurer. So let's say Lloyd's of London. They have A-rated agencies within Lloyd's of London, Swiss Re. So you got to go to these really big players that so far have been a little bit, let's call it cautious about insuring an asset like Bitcoin because, they don't really understand it. But now, I just had a presentation over in Nashville about a month ago where some guys had cracked this nut and they're coming out with Bitcoin insurance. To be fair, it's in fiat and it's for the amount you insure it in fiat, but it has some very interesting ways to manage price fluctuations with Bitcoin. It has a fairly high deductible, which I think is like 30%, but it's insured. It's actually backed by A-rated paper. And so it's going to make Bitcoin investment grade for these institutional investors and companies and family offices that so far couldn't actually buy the asset because it was deemed too risky for their portfolio. So besides the BlackRock ETF, this is also coming online at a very interesting time, pre-halving.
I was just about to say it's almost as if they choose the timing of releasing this stuff, right?
It's so weird. I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, it's sometimes like things in Bitcoin always align for good and bad. Like when it's bad news, it's just it wants to get push you into a hole. But when it's good news, it's just like, how can all of this be happening?
And some of these things that you're talking about, some hardcore maxi Bitcoiners about, oh no, it's, it's not the Bitcoin way, but it's almost like a means to an end. If you want to get somewhere, you have to take the journey first, right? You have to, put all options on the table and
Well,
open yourself up to new possibilities within the Bitcoin
mm.
ecosystem.
So it might surprise you to hear that I consider myself a Bitcoin maxi. That is my currency of choice. But I don't think being a maxi excludes leaving people out. To me,
Right.
the whole so one of the biggest value propositions of Bitcoin for me is that Bitcoin is the money for enemies, meaning we don't have
Hmm.
to like each other for us both to use Bitcoin. And in
Right.
that sense, Bitcoin is the most inclusive currency in the world. And being a true maxi means allowing for that inclusivity. So use Bitcoin however you want to use it. Like there's no one right or wrong way, I don't believe. And
Mm.
honestly, if we want to go mainstream, we have to allow for all of these types of use cases because not everybody's comfortable hacking away at their computer and building their own node and having their own server infrastructure in house. And we have a friend here in the office, and he's like going down into this what is it, the star 9 thing, and you got to custody your information and you got to custody. And I get it, and I agree with him, but I also recognize 90% of people, you know,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's like, here's what I say. For the end user, convenience trumps security 100 out of 100 times. So we want to go mainstream. Let's make this shit easy. You know, it's it's pretty simple. Let's get the let's get a better experience than what they have with their bank right now, than what they have with credit cards, because we can get there. Bitcoin and Lightning specifically solve so many issues that the traditional payment rails have right now that it's not even funny.
Yeah. Bitcoin is superior in so many ways. And there's so many different opinions are in the space about what Bitcoin is for everyone, and that's the whole point of it. Everyone needs to be able to have that conversation and use Bitcoin the way they think it should be used, and that's the whole point of it, really. What's your stance on the whole KYC, non KYC discussions that are constantly being hashed out on Bitcoin,
Yeah.
Twitter, etc.?
Well, uh, first of all, KYC, I'm very opposed to, but I comply with fully, which is weird. I don't believe the way we change this world is by just uh, hammering people and regulators and calling them evil or the spawn of Satan or whatever. Uh, they're not. They're looking at some problems out there that are real problems. I think they're going around about it the wrong way because it's about weaponizing the ultimate agent for peace that we have, which is money. And if you do that, if you weaponize your agent for peace, then you're incentivizing violence. And then you have things like Ukraine, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Somalia. These are all the violence in all of these countries are not because we didn't KYC enough people. It's because the KYC AML system as it stands today incentivizes this violence, and the fiat world as it stands today incentivizes this violence. And I want to bring this point of view to the regulators, and I constantly engage with them, and I realize, like, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do, and I don't believe, like, I agree with you in that it is an issue. We have to solve this. I'm just saying, let's see if there's another way, because right now we might be, creating more harm than good. So, but I fall on it in that sense. I oppose it completely, but I comply with it completely because I understand the world we're living in, and I understand the concern of a lot of people. And at the end of the day, these are the laws that were generated by elected officials, etc. And I have to work in that world. It's like,
Yeah.
let's say, if you're opposed to drugs,
Mm.
you don't go at the problem by becoming a drug lord. You try to reach out to your uh, officials and say, listen, let's talk about this. Come back. We got to get the voters on our side, basically, is what we got to do. Because once we get the voters, yeah.
And I guess it's always, which perspective are you coming from? If I have the ability to pay for my coffee and morning breakfast with Lightning, I want to make sure that the business that accepts it is, fully compliant. That it's not like a backdoor gambling poker site and
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually financing some weird stuff. So in a way, even though like you could go into the whole rabbit hole, how anonymous is Lightning and privacy and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I still engage with a probably fully KYC business because it has to
Mm-hmm.
do it in the legal framework it operates in, right? So
Well,
can it be truly private if you always engage this way? Or even maybe, if I pay like a freelancer who has his account on Ibex and he verified, like they have to do this to open the account, right? So it's always that
yeah.
sacrifice between convenience and super duper privacy.
Yeah. Well, here's how I feel about it. So another thing that I do feel, and I don't know that how this plays with the KYC people, I do segregate it into two camps. One is private private individual KYC, and the other one is business. I believe we do not need to KYC or even want to KYC individuals. That's counterproductive. I think it's one of the worst things. And like, I've been a victim of this, by the way. The reason I couldn't send money to Japan was because of KYC AML laws, right? So I I know I felt it. I can't open or I couldn't open a brokerage account since 2000 whatever, because again, KYC AML. I'm too expensive to onboard for a broker. So I never got to buy stocks because I'm from Guatemala. So I understand how much they segregate the world. So I'm not in favor of them for the individual. However, I'm fully in favor for KYB. I don't believe businesses deserve any privacy. If you're a
Right.
business, you should be open books, and especially if you're a public business.
Yeah, I get that because if you're deciding to put yourself out there and build a business, you need not only a good product and reputation for your customers to be incentivized to transact with you. You need to know that the business is legitimate in some way as well, right?
Well, that and the fact of the matter is that a business is not an individual. So you can't,
Right.
let's say, prosecute a business in the same way you do an individual, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah.
A business can't go to jail. A business cannot die. And that is a huge difference. And we like to treat businesses the same as people. And sometimes they even get treated preferentially. But I don't understand why, because they get this huge advantage that they can't die, they can't go to jail, they can't really be threatened in that way. The only ones that suffer consequences at the end of the day are individuals, not
Mm-hmm.
businesses. And also, a business is beholden to too many stakeholders for
Mm-hmm.
it to be completely private, right?
Mm.
It's like, you're a business, even if you're a small business, you have 10 employees, that's probably 50 people that depend on average, or 40 people now because there's less kids involved, but 40 people on average that depend on that business survivability. And having transparency in that world is, I think, beneficial to the individuals, because I'm concerned with the individual, not the
Mm-hmm.
business. And this is also why our offerings are mainly to businesses, or we cater to business specifically, because that's how I kind of solved my conundrum with the KYC, KYB stuff. I'm completely fine KYB in business. It has to be done.
I mean, imagine, I know MicroStrategy, well, maybe we get an insight. I know MicroStrategy is building their own Lightning products and stuff.
Yeah.
But imagine a public company like this one who is actively, I don't know, distributing their shareholder updates quarterly. If you could actually just, open an Explorer and see like, oh, there is actually the money flow in and out, which they promised, and you can maybe verify it with a node or through other tools. That's what we want in the end, right?
Yeah.
And that's also the big criticism we make with banks, like, oh, you do everything behind shut doors. But for some reason, people can't differentiate there and always see it as a it's not a victimhood, but it's definitely we're being abused by something which inevitably businesses have no choice anyway. So if they already have to do it, let's use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to your point, I think when we say fix the money, fix the world, it goes to your point exactly because of how I see it. And what you're talking about is we're getting all these bad signals because we don't have a true market mechanism going on. And the reason we don't have a good market mechanism going on is because we don't have free money. And free money is the prerequisite to a free market. And the more we manipulate through printing, setting interest rates and whatever, the worse our signal is going to get. And so a lot of these issues, the KYC, KYB issue and all of these, we can't even start to tackle because our signal is so wrong that we don't know if our solution is going to work or not, or is even the correct solution, or are we even looking at the problem? Because the signal is so bad. And especially if, for example, so as bad as money printing is, I think setting interest rates is worse. And let me explain this. So imagine this. We all know price fixing is wrong. And it's one of the worst things you can do to any product or economy. The minute you price fix something, everything goes to hell, right? And so interest rates, it's very interesting because interest rates are the price of money in the future. It's a discounting mechanism. How much is it worth it for you to not have this money available today, but have it in the future? And how much is it worth for me to pay you to have this money right now? And it's a price, right? So get this, we're price fixing that product, which everything else is priced in.
Right.
So we're playing with fire here, gentlemen. We're like, everything is on the table at this point. Because if we think as humans, if we think that we are smart enough to determine the price of something 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, today, and it's the most important product humanity has, because it's our agent for peace. Well, we might be stretching some stuff there. I don't think there's anybody smart enough to do that, or has ever existed, honestly.
Right. That's an interesting. Wow. Yeah, you've opened up a whole rabbit hole in my head right now, and I need to sort of think about where I'm going to go down that rabbit hole.
I'll just add some like mist and stuff on top of the edit, like.
But what captured my question that came up for me when we were talking about the KYC, non-KYC stuff was how it sort of blends in with the whole privacy side, because obviously you get a lot of people talking a lot about how important privacy is, and I understand that, and I believe that privacy is obviously very important because when we take control of our own money, separate money from state, I get all that, but there is a part of me that does sort of wonder about how dangerous complete privacy can be, and what that does mean long term. Have you had any thoughts about privacy and how that might be a good thing or a bad thing long term for Bitcoin?
Yeah. So privacy to me is really at the core. We don't have freedom if we don't have privacy. Basically, that's where I fall on it. This comes from somebody who, again, growing up in the 80s in Guatemala. Mm, I feel like being born where I was born and doing the things I did has uniquely prepared me, because these are not stories that I hear third hand, or I get on stage and I'm like talking about the poor people receiving remit. I'm there. Like, this is stuff I felt on my skin, right?
You heard
And
it and you go like, "Yep, that's me."
yeah, exactly. And I'm not like, when people talk about the disenfranchised, I am the disenfranchised, right? It's
Right.
yeah, yeah, I get it. So, but getting a little bit more serious, in the 80s, I still grew up in a world in Guatemala where uh, you could just disappear. The government could just disappear you. It was a real concern. And I'll tell you a story now, because everybody that happened is dead now. So my grandfather was an Air Force colonel for the Guatemalan Air Force. Yeah, back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, yeah. And around that time, a dictator came into power in Nicaragua. And so a lot of Nicaraguans fled to Guatemala because they were being persecuted and killed. And so one day, my grandpa gets a call in the middle of the night that he has to do an emergency flight to Nicaragua with some cargo. And so he goes to, he gets to the plane, and he always inspects his plane because he was very anal about it. He would check every single bolt and everything. And when he opens the cargo hold, it's a bunch of people, and people he knows. These are Nicaraguans
Shit.
that he's flying back to get executed. And so he gets on the plane, it's in the middle of the flight, he can't do it. So he sabotages the plane and has to do an emergency landing in El Salvador. Does that in a farm somewhere, just wherever he could like land, and opens the cargo hold and says, "Guys, you better leave, because if the Salvadorian government gets here before everybody's out of here, you will get killed," right? Um, and so that happened once. A couple of weeks later, again, same story. Flies off, sabotages, lands someplace else. Now, he was good enough mechanically that the sabotage was like, it was a real condition for the plane, and nobody could, I obviously, point the finger at him. But 2 times in a row, come on, right?
Mm.
Um, and from then on, he got confined to his house, and he couldn't go out. He was under, we call it house arrest. Yeah,
Mhm.
arresto domiciliar, and basically drank himself to death. So, and that's what happens when you don't have privacy. Government is not always nice, and it's not always nice globally, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it might be great in a place where your freedoms are secured, if we can even point to such a place today.
Right.
Um, but there's a lot of bad governments out there. And are we really willing to condemn, let's say, 5 billion people to persecution or potential persecution, right? So that's where I fall on it. It's too high a price. And I think there's, again, we have to get creative. When we see a problem, not necessarily the first solution is the best solution. And if we start getting some feedback that this is not working how we intend it to work. So for example, AML KYC, we are getting feedback constantly that this is not working as it is intended. So why do we think pushing it harder is going to fix it?
Yeah.
Maybe we want to find another way, get a little bit creative here, right? So
Yeah, because we've learned all the lessons of the states from over the span of history. Yet again and again and again, states have found a way to debase our money, to take away our freedoms, to erode away our rights, and to put us under more and more surveillance. And that's quite an that story you told me is just sealed the deal for me really about how significant privacy is, because without it, we can put ourselves in all sorts of trouble because we're putting ourselves in the firing line. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely.
yeah,
And it shows you have to protect the individual's privacy to the best ability possible.
Mm.
And if they engage with these businesses, there is no... Essentially, if you're semi-private with a business, they just see a transaction going in, going out, right? They don't have a clue what's going on unless you can protect yourself against these things. And it's a very tricky situation you are in as a company, I imagine, as well. Because how often, if you speak to these regulators, do you have to basically explain the same thing over and over again?
yes. And I talk to them all the time, or maybe not necessarily me, but somebody in the company. So we're constantly engaging with them. And to be fair, I want to give a shout out because they never get it in this space. But most of the people working in this regulatory space, they're good people and they really believe the job they're doing, and they really they're trying to solve for a real problem, like how do we keep criminals off the street. I'm just kind of, when I engage with them, why do you want to make me the policeman? And I explain the problems, and we meet someplace where we're saying, yeah, this is not really working great either for them or for us, but it's very hard to move forward as it stands right now. So most of them, and they want to incentivize business, and they want to help the disenfranchised, and they want to do all this stuff as well. And when I bring these arguments like, okay, listen, fine, let's KYC the guy that does, $10,000, but give me room here. What amount of transaction can I push that you're fine with? Like, it's not gonna be money laundering or whatever, right? And so let's see where we can work here. And they want to do it. Honestly, they do want to come up with solutions. Sometimes even they just answer to their boss and they're like, yeah, I want to do what you're saying, but I got this. And it has to be a group effort, honestly, from the people, where we have to go and really ask our governments, stop doing this. You're hurting us.
Yeah.
Because you are.
Yeah. I was going to say, because it's as well intentioned and as good of a people they might be, they're working in a system that is fundamentally broken because of the money is broken and it's manipulated, and all the tentacles of the fiat world are spread across all the industries and the media and everything. So we're in a system that is benefiting the state and the people at the top, and we're the ones that are having to give away our identity, surrender our privacy, so they can hoover up every last little drop of fiat money that we're trying to generate for them. We're like the battery, if you like, of their systems.
And there's something interesting you said there. We're beholden to the state, and if there's one place that absolutely deserves zero privacy, it's the government. This is how I feel.
Yes.
The government, it should be like a glass box. There should be absolutely no mistake about what's going in there, how they're spending money, how much money they're receiving, where your tax dollar is going. It should
That's the
be...
great lie. they're meant to be working for us, right?
They should be the ultimate KYC institution
Yeah.
in the world. Like,
Right.
you have to declare every single line here. You have here, I don't know, $2 trillion for defense.
Mm.
Yeah.
Come here. Let me
Yeah.
see the last bullet you bought and where
Right.
exactly everything this went.
How
Yeah.
many audits did like the U.S. military went through? Like 5 or 6 at this point, and they still can't find bazillions of dollars. So like, these are the people telling us what to do. You go like, holy
Yeah.
shit.
Well,
You
not
can't even
only
manage your
that,
own money.
there's the discretionary spend that is just black boxes because of national security
Mm.
situations, which,
Yeah.
dude,
So
Don't get me
nation's
started on
safe enough. You have the
CBDCs.
biggest army in the world.
So
Right.
maybe we should just declare the Lightning Network as national security and, live our own life there.
Yeah,
That'd
you
be the
really,
ultimate private hack.
yeah, we really should.
But
It-
speaking of
it's-
Lightning, in the Bitcoin space, we often hear like, oh, it's great for remittances, payments, immersing creators online with things like Noster.
Mhm.
You, as someone in the industry very actively, I bet there are more use cases than this. And if you're not allowed to share by name and such, no worry. But, especially with things like AI coming up and you do read about these updates and these new formats and ways of engaging with it, what is there what Lightning can't touch? Is there anything? Is the liquidity an issue for some things? Or do you see a future where basically the whole internet is driven by Lightning?
Well, yeah, I see that future, and it has to happen. So the premise is this: our payment systems are just not good enough for the world we're in right now, for the technology we're using. And money wants to move faster. It's very important, this concept. Money wants to move faster because everything is getting delivered faster and you need to settle faster. And how we see at Ibex, the Lightning Network, is as a hyper-efficient settlement network. And it is a great settlement network because it's on the most liquid asset out there, outside of the dollar, but it's on the most liquid asset out there. And so you can settle any other asset at the endpoints. So you can go from, let's say, pounds to quetzales over Lightning and not care. So when I get asked the question, how do we know we won, is when everybody's using Lightning, but nobody knows it's getting used. And that's how the value proposition we bring to our customers is we enable them to leverage this functionality of Lightning, of being an instant settlement network, to move any value globally instantly and have settlement finality, which is also amazing in itself. If you go into payments, what I'm talking about is really, really exciting, and there's a lot of projects trying to solve for this, and we solved it. I mean, Lightning, not just Ibex. Lightning solved it. And so, use cases. What needs settlement? Basically, everything needs settlement. Any commercial transaction of any kind needs to get settled somehow. And so I see a future where every financial transaction gets settled and every commercial transaction, no matter what it is, gets settled on Lightning. And to your point, what we like to do, and this is part of Lightning, because it changes the paradigm, specifically for, let's say, global payments. And it changes it in this way. So right now, most global settlement companies are used to grouping transactions into as big a transaction as they can and sending one wire, one transaction, right, overseas. And so if they can send 100 million at a time, that's the best thing, because then it gets really, really efficient. But Lightning is turning this on its head, where you get more efficient the lower value you go. But the cool thing about doing it in lower value is you first want to start streaming the payments, but the side effect is that because you're doing lower value transactions, all your operation is de-risked significantly. And you can move a lot of money real fast if you do it at a small scale. And then the KYC, AML, everything, even liquidity requirements, everything is de-risked significantly. And the other effect of this, how I'm thinking about it, is imagine in the 80s or start of the 80s, late 70s, you had batch computing processing, meaning batch instruction processing, right? And then the microprocessor came along and it allowed to do a lot of transactions faster. And so real-time processing became the ideal. And everything we're doing right now when we're talking here, is enabled because of this real-time processing power of the instructions. Well, what happens when we have real-time processing of financial instructions? Well, I don't know. I don't like.
Yeah. How can you even comprehend that? It's like it's limitless possibilities with that type of
Exactly.
technology, right?
Exactly. And one of the first things that are going to be impacted that I do know is AI and IoT
Mm.
and the synergy between that. Because
Tell us more
now
about
we
that.
finally have a way to transact nano value or value at a nanoscale, which is what these technologies need to actually get monetized and work. This cannot happen on any other technology, not
Right.
even close. So it's a very exciting time to be in this thing. AI
It
and
really is.
Lightning will converge.
How do you see that happening? And
AI
how would that
needs,
work in practice?
I your guess is as good as mine. I just know that
Right.
AI is going to be needing to be paying and themselves between AIs and two other devices, other robots, IoT
Mm.
devices. And how it happens, I'm not exactly sure, but AI wants light. That I do
Right.
know. I'll give an example because I'm fooling around with this idea. I want to push out a marketing campaign next year, but it can't be just Ibex. It has to be the whole industry. So I'm working on getting industry players together, and it's called Pay with Lightning. And so one of the ideas for the advert is I don't know if you follow soccer or how big of fans you are, but a couple of years back, there was this ad for the World Cup where they would hit the ball and it landed in another country with another player and it landed with another country.
Yeah,
Do
I
that,
know
but
you
with
mean.
money, right? With lightning, that it happens instantly. But the other advert that I have is a guy that's mining and is receiving the sats instantly as they're being mined because they're being received on the Lightning Network. He's in a Tesla. He drives up to one of these flat chargers, wireless chargers that are car sized, right?
Mhm.
Drives up, gets out of the car, and without him doing anything, like show the car communicating with the flatbed to get charged up, and just the sats streaming back out from his wallet in real time. And this is all going to be possible. So
You, that's an amazing vision of the future. But what I've also seen on socials with Bitcoin is some fear amongst some Bitcoiners about the dangers of AI and how it could be a threat to us as in humanity. What do you say to those people?
there's always that risk, right? Any great tool can be used for good as well as for evil. Uh, at the end of the day, it's going to fall on uh, the people using it. I do believe that. I think AI, to be fair, as great as it is, and I just used it last night to draft some communication, uh, but it's still not quite there where I would call it an intelligence, meaning it's not creative. And I did this by getting into an argument with some AI bots where you could tell they were kind of going to talking points that they heard, but there's not the creative idea. There's not the
Right.
spark of, I grab this, and then I push out this new, never before thought of
Mm.
thing that
Right.
humans have. So when I see that, then I will be, okay, is this guy going to be good or bad? Because AI can be good or bad, right?
Mhm.
It will have the same foibles as humans, I believe, in the sense you meet good humans, you meet bad humans. Most of the time, a human can be both good and bad, which is weird.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's an amazing tool. I think it's what we need right now,
Mm.
honestly, to continue to
Yeah, and that's exactly
progress.
what it is, right? It's a tool.
Yeah.
And Joel, I know you've used it a few times to sort of like give you some sort of ideas and inspiration and the sort of content that you create and write, right?
Dude, I use it on a daily basis at this point.
There you go, you
Yeah.
see.
I mean,
It,
it is exactly like you say, Jose. It's I can use a hammer to hang up nails to hang up my images, or I can go out and kill someone. It's up
yeah.
to me how I use the tool, and I personally think, especially for creators, if they get more familiar with AI, especially open source AI, because there's a lot of cool stuff happening there as well, and then see like, okay, I already have an open source anything tool.
Mhm.
Where's the open source money? And the only logical thing has to be Bitcoin and eventually Lightning, which begs the question, Jose, what is Ibex? What is your guys' future look like? What are the ideas you want to push? Because I know you've always,
Mhm.
or you also are engaged with big chains in Latin America. You recently also were on the floor in Mexico, or some of you
Yeah, yeah.
guys. What's your vision look like there?
Well, we we were really focusing. So as much as Bitcoin has been a grassroots movement till now, I think true mainstream adoption happens when corporations start using it. And that's also when we get all the regulations on our side. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Uh, PGP, right? PGP, pretty good privacy, was considered weapons grade technology in the late 80s by the Pentagon, and there was this big lawsuit, and how the guys that were involved in PGP actually won and avoided jail time for divulging national security secrets was they published it in a book. They published the code for PGP in a book. And then it became a freedom of speech argument, and that's how they got around it. But there was still a lot of stigma around using PGP and using these privacy tools in the 90s. And it wasn't until banking realized, oh, we can use this to secure our transactions, and it enabled open banking and it enabled all of these things. It wasn't until they actually started using it that the whole narrative changed, right? And nobody questions having internet security now. Like it's, yeah, hashing and all of this cipher, whatever. It's enabled, but it set the precedent, PGP, but then it was when the banks adopted it. Also, let's say the computer. The computer was some weird guys in the 70s, homebrew club, something like that, right? That's where Apple got born. And it was this nickel and dime type of business. And but when IBM then convinced corporations they needed to get computing power, and corporations saw how much they would save it, then it's when it went mainstream. Email, same thing. Email was around, and I had my own email back when it was crappy to use. You basically had to put in the IP that you were sending it to.
I
Ridiculous.
remember.
Anyway, But then some guys figured they could avoid sending so many corporate memos and they would save X amount of millions on paper just on memo alone. And then they are like, okay. And then everybody in that corporation started using it. And then it went mainstream. Cars, telephones, it goes on and on. So we're in that world right now where we want to show corporations how they can leverage this technology to the maximum to make a lot of money. Because I know when that happens, we get it into the hands of everybody, even if nobody knows they're using it. But then we're running on Bitcoin, which is the good first step.
This is where I think, when the likes of the ETFs and all that sort of stuff, which people are anticipating and holding their breath on and things like that. But it's really the building that's going on in Lightning that gives us the opportunity to transact instantly globally. Is the thing that's really, once people get into the Bitcoin space and they realize they can do that on Lightning, that's when there's no incentive to go, and you've got to stay in the system, right? Why would you go back to a broken system when you've had a bit of taste of Lightning?
Well, yeah. And the thing is, we truly are solving for some huge issues. So to give you an idea, I heard this, that Airbnb pays something in the order of $700 million a year on fees, FX, and payment, like processing, but not processing, just looking for mislaid payments. That's almost $1 billion for this one corporation.
Right.
And all of these things are solved with Lightning. Are you going to tell me Airbnb doesn't want to look at Lightning and say, even if we cut that just in half, it's $350 million a year? And we can cut it by way more, because this is not just a little bit better. This is way better. This is at least 10 times better than the technology we currently run. And we're just starting, because this is a baby. We have what? 7, today is 23, 6 years? This is a ridiculously short amount of time to be doing what we're doing.
That's amazing. And I'm looking at the time of the episode, and we're running up to time now. So let's wind it up. And if anyone hasn't been convinced about the potential of Lightning, and you've listened to this episode and you're still not, then I don't know what to say to you. But it's left me feeling super bullish. I don't know about you, Joel, but Jose, what we've started to do on the end of our episodes is see if we can hold true to the saying that all roads lead back to Bitcoin. And we've started to give our guests a word or a topic, and you've got to try and bring that back to Bitcoin somehow. And just because during the episode I've heard now and again a ping pong ball in the background, I thought the word ping pong might be a good way to see if you can relate that back to Bitcoin somehow.
Okay, ping pong. This is a hard one. I don't want to be here like 5 minutes thinking about this. Do I go for the low-hanging
can always cut, mate.
Do I go for the low-hanging fruit and just say I want to buy some?
Yeah, you can go for it.
Some ping pong paddles online, and
Sure.
the manufacturer is in China, and I don't have a way to pay him other than Bitcoin, so I pay him in Bitcoin and I get my paddles.
Yeah, I was thinking of like the analogy you was using earlier about the football being used to be kicking across the other part of the globe. That could be like the representation of what a lightning payment looks like. So yeah, I'll take that.
Well, there's another one that's a little bit more metaphorical, which is how lightning channels work. So lightning channels, and here's where you want to do low value payments, right? So let's say you could segregate a channel to be just for, let's say, petrol stations, right? And petrol stations is a very constant business. You know, your average ticket might be 70 quid, your top ticket is 500 quid, and that's about it. So theoretically, with Lightning and its ability to go back and forth like a ping pong, but at lightning speed, you can route with, let's say, a max of $500 of committed capital, infinite amount of capital. So if you really get theoretically possible, right? If you really get hyper efficient at this, you can process n amount of payments for that petrol stations globally, because they operate the same way globally. And so with 500 quid, or let's say 1,000 to be on the safe side, right? You can process all of the payments for all of the gas stations in all of the world, going back and forth like a ping pong.
That's the advanced level answer. I'm always bringing it back to Bitcoin. I like it. Well done. Jose,
Yeah.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you here at Rabbit Hole Stories. I've learned a lot about the Lightning Network, and it's something I've always wanted to learn more about. And the more guests we have on talking about Lightning, it's just reinforcing my knowledge. So thank you for helping me in my Lightning rabbit hole. Joel, any last thoughts?
I guess we have to shout out Jose's social handles because I think he's massively underfollowed there. So many. I'm just gonna say it out loud. Shitty other CEOs from other Lightning companies get a way bigger following, and I think their ideas are 100 times worse. So definitely check Jose out on the socials. And you also mentioned for the listeners you're going to be in some of the conferences, with the next one being Riga, probably the following week after releasing this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be in Riga, then I'm going to be in a conference in Mexico. I believe it's called Bitcoin Block Party, something like that. And then I'm going to be in Pacific Bitcoin. And then I'm going to be in Amsterdam. And then I'm going to be in Lugano for Plan B. So.
Oh, cool. So I'll see you around a few times in person as well.
Yeah, doing a little bit of hopping to close out the year.
Yeah, that's
then I'm going to Dubai, actually.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
So
when do you go on holiday?
What is even the holiday? Joe?
Right.
Lightning doesn't sleep. Come on.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh dear. Brilliant, mate. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in Amsterdam. So thank you once again, and goodbye to everyone else, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.